What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Automated. This is episode number 8. Today, it is me and Pranav only because Kent is taking some vacation. Much needed, I'm sure. Or, I wonder, what is he doing? He can't really go anywhere right now. You think he's just hanging out in his hot tub, Pranav?
Oh yeah, I bet he's having a Rainier in his hot tub.
Yeah,
Like
yes. A pilsner in his hot tub. That's what he would say.
no, I think it's a Rainier.
You think so?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, good,
we
good.
can have a bet on it.
Let's bet on it. Kent, upon your return, you're gonna have to confirm for everyone who is right. Okay, so today Pranav is actually going to show us a group of nuggets that have come out for UI flows. There's actually 4 new things I think we'll cover today. Should I go ahead and tell them what they are?
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. We're going to check out the command outputs, right? So now we can actually take outputs from command line. You can screenshot your UI flows. You can copy pieces to the clipboard to use in others. And then also there's looping and arrays now in UI flows. Did I get them all right?
Yeah, that's really great. And really, what it boils down to is Power Automate and UI flows. It's a cloud service, and we've been sort of iterating over a lot of these features that have been asked by customers. And if you think about these features, they're very small features, but it's what I say. We used to have death by 1,000 cuts, and now we are having many lives by by 1,000 cake slices. And
Nice.
these will help you sort of build your automation faster and stuff. So we'll quickly take a look at all of these features, and then sort of get you started so that you can also start using these in your automation scripts as well.
Okay, cool. And so I understand you have a few demos prepared for us.
I do. So no
Awesome.
slides today. We're
Cool.
just gonna walk straight into these demos. Yeah. So this first demo, what we're gonna talk about is, think about a scenario where you were generating remotes as a banking scenario where you're working on a bank and you build this automation scripts that launches a command prompt, which we saw in one of our earlier builder videos. And often what happens with these scripts is as you run these commands, uh, you want to send a screenshot at the end of the process of any of the failures that happen in the command prompt. So then the business user can take a look at the screenshot and do some action on it. And so what I'm going to show you in this particular UI flow is a combination of these features that we just talked about earlier, where in this UI flow now we have a concept of having variables. This is the same feature that we have in Power Automate flows, where you can define variables, they can have different types, and you can also use expressions both from the dynamic content perspective, as well as you can define one of the many expressions that Power Automate supports, like around concatenation, datetime, parsing to lower to upper. So this really sort of brings in the power of the entire expression language into UI flows as well. And the
Very
next
cool.
step over here is I'm going to run a UI flow which is going to launch a command prompt. Again, this is something that we've seen it earlier as well. And when the command prompt gets launched, I'm going to use this key tactic of doing a control A. So if I launch my prompt, you'll see me doing a control A and a control C, which basically is going to copy all the command output onto my clipboard. And then I'm going to use this new action called uh, get clipboard text, which is going to then grab this clipboard text, which I then can use further downstream in my UI flow to do some action. So in this case, I'm going to look or find a certain value inside the get output from clipboard, and if the value matches a certain search string, I am then going to perform an action where I am going to then take a screenshot, and I'm going to take a screenshot by pressing the print screen key and then I'm going to paste the output in Notepad. And I can save this file in Notepad, and then I can consume it from Power Automate using the file connector. So there's a lot of stuff happening over here. So let's go ahead and first of all run this so that you folks can see how it's happening in action. So I'm going to do next. Here my input string is this is my input command I want to run. This could be your favorite sort of report generation command as well. And here's a search string. This could be something that can indicate a success or something that can indicate a failure. So the actual your response that you want to parse from your output. Um, and then you can decide to take a screenshot or not. So I'm just going to run the script over here. It's going to launch a prompt, and it's going to run that command called datetime. And this could really be sort of any command that you had. And then it's going to hit enter, and then it's going to launch sort of paint, where you can again get any output from clipboard that you had. And so really what happened over here was, if you see, this was my variable. This was me running through the UI flows steps. If you see my output file, you will see the entire output of the console that was captured over here. And then I had some conditional logic running over here, which was basically checking for the search string. And since it didn't find the search string, it ran the output command, the no condition, which then eventually sort of ended up launching Notepad to run through the steps. So very easily, this is how you can sort of capture output from the clipboard as well. And I can show you a live example in terms of how the recording experience would look like as well. So in this case, I'm just going to launch a recorder. I'll just show you how exactly I recorded those steps. I'm just going to launch up my console, hit record. I can give my input command name over here. And these are steps that we saw earlier in our videos. And I can do Control A, Control C. And then I have this new action, which is called get text from clipboard, which get output from command. And so this is what captures the entire output of my console. Which I can then go ahead over here, and I can then start using it into my variables. So I can set the value of the variable I just defined. And then I have, the whole expression language to myself. So I can do to lower, I can do to upper, and then I can pass in the dynamic value that I got from get clipboard action into my UI flow. This sort of really helps you add more custom logic inside your UI flows itself, so you can make it more functional in terms of the operations that you can do.
Yeah, I think it really it makes it so that you can do a lot more inside of the UI flow rather than relying on automated flows to do the logic and pass values back and forth. I think it makes the whole process a lot more lightweight. I mean, as
Exactly.
as far as building it, right?
Yeah. Like, it's like a lot of these common operations around getting the current date time. It'll help you in other operations as well in terms of looking up file names or sort of storing files. So it
Awesome.
sort of really makes it more powerful now to sort of add these custom logic into your UI flows. as
Well,
well.
and also let's not look past copy my clipboard, right? That's a game changer right there. Not having to remake everything from scratch, being able to make reusable parts that you can copy and paste. I mean, that right there is a huge thing. We call that a little nugget, but I think, that when that landed in Power Automate itself on the API flow side of things, I mean, that was long awaited. And so to see it come to UI flows in such a quick amount of time after GA is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and the reason that's very critical over here is in UI flows, for example, if you look at all these actions, right? Like uh, it's effectively figuring out in the dorm what to click and what the selector should be used. So there's a lot of repeatability over here that somebody has to take care of manually sort of handcrafting all these steps. And what you can do now is you can just say copy to my clipboard, and then you can go to a different uh, scope, and then you can add that action over there. And so you can say insert. You can also copy paste
Entire scopes.
entire scope
Yeah.
and then paste it over here. And so now what you can see is, I can very easily start replicating logic across my UI flows. And then if you have very complex flow UI flow steps which have 100 actions, so let's say what we saw one in one of our earlier videos that we were logging into SAP, and the login section and the closing of the SAP app in the end is are common steps that you would copy paste across different flows. So instead of re-recording all these steps, I can now just say copy to my clipboard and paste it anywhere inside my UI flow. So it really helps you speed up your development process of these automation scripts.
Yep.
And yeah, these are very, very simple operations, but then they have very they're very valuable in terms of the impact and the time, the reduction in time it can bring you from your recording perspective.
Yep. Now, a couple caveats with this copy to clipboard. If it behaves in the same way that the API flows side of things does, there's a couple things you should know. The first one is that the clipboard will only last per login. So if you log out of Power Automate, what you save to your clipboard is gone. Also, if you refresh your browser, you will also clear what is on the clipboard. And so it's recommended that you keep one tab open where you are saving things to your clipboard and then build in another tab. So that way, if you refresh, you don't clear out everything that was in your clipboard. Now, Pranav, do you know if those same rules exist for the RPA side of things?
Yeah, I think they should, because it's sort of leveraging the same capabilities that
Okay.
was there in Power Automate flows,
Okay.
and it's sort of
Awesome.
bringing them into UI flows as well. And I think you should be able to. I haven't tried it myself. We can try it if you can copy paste to different UI flows as well. But I'm curious, so I'm just gonna try
Yeah.
it.
As far as I understood, in the previous copy paste, there it is. Yep. You should be able
There
to.
you
Yep.
go. Yeah.
Awesome.
And
Cool.
which is really makes it very powerful now, right? Like I can take my SAP login, for example, from one UI flow to the other and start building these automation scripts very quickly.
Yep. Yep. And again, as long as you're in the same session, as long as you don't log out and back in, that'll work.
Right. And as long as you don't refresh your
Yep.
tab. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Cool. All right. What's the next thing you're going to show us?
The next thing I want to show you is the concept of loops. Uh, so what this scenario this feature enables is um, let's say you need to run the UI flow like n number of times. If you're processing 5 orders, for each order you want to call a UI flow, and you want to iterate over those that order information inside a UI flow. So you can now do it with the concept of loops. What this means is, let's say I have to run these 3 commands. So at the end of the day, I want to run uh, these 3 reports on the command line. And
Yep.
so what I can do is I can define an input array type variable. So this is basically holds a list of items. and I can pass in this list of items into my UI flow where I'm going to launch the command prompt as we saw in one of our earlier videos, and then I'm going to run the command and I'm going to pass in that command name 3 different times. So this is taking some time. So let's refresh. And now I'll probably lose my clipboard option. Right? So this is the value that will be replaced from the 3 steps that we saw from the input array that we saw from Power Automate. And what this script does is it's going to launch the command prompt as we've seen earlier. So I'm going to close this out. And then it's going to left click on the command prompt to get focus. And this is the new action or new command that we've enabled called apply to each. So I can go say add an action. I can say built in. So we saw conditions before. Now we have apply to each as well, where I can then sort of put in the commands I want to run in a loop. So in this case, I'm going to run the action, which is going to enter the command name. And I'm going to also bring in the enter key into the loop. And so what this will do is it's going to pass in those 3 command options from Power Automate. It's going to launch the command prompt, and it's going to loop over all the 3 commands, and it's going to enter one command, press enter key, and then it's going to loop, then enter command 2, and press the enter key, loop again, enter command 3, and then press the enter key again. So that's what this flow is going to do. So I'm just going to click next, and I can test it locally over here. So now this is going to launch the command prompt. It's going to type in the command A, and then it's going to press the enter key. And now you notice that it's pressing command B on the same command prompt instance. So I'm not relaunching the command prompt. I'm just executing it within the same command instance itself. And so this helps you do any repeatable actions very quickly. And what this allows you to do is to make your now UI flows perform more actions. And if you remember that we talked about making UI flows stateless as much as possible. So what this allows you to do is to run those 3 loops on the same UI flow. So they'll run on the same instance of the virtual machine where these flows are running in. And so this basically helps you do more operations within the context of the same UI flow itself. Otherwise, what would have happened is you would run the loop in Power Automate, and each iteration of the loop would call a UI flow. And then once the UI flow is done, it's going to go back into Power Automate. So there's some chattiness that will come into the process. But now with the support of having loops inside UI flows, you can just make one call from Power Automate to UI flow, and then the UI flow executes 3 times on the local machine, and then the results are sort of returned back into Power Automate as well. So that sort of helps you reduce the calls between Power Automate and UI flow, and helps you sort of build stateless UI flows, which can work well in low latency environments as well.
Nice.
So that's a pretty neat addition that has happened, which is going to be very useful as you're building your automation scripts as well.
Definitely. I think in building automated flows, sometimes I tell people like be wary of loops because you can iterate through thousands of items and then you have lots of API calls and things, but in the UI flow world, none of that applies the same. And so I actually think this is somewhere where I would consider to tell people like lean into loops because it makes a lot of sense, way more sense in this context, I think, than in some of the automated flow context.
Correct. And just a quick overview of on how to actually, I mean, use loops inside UI flows. What you would do is, you would go about sort of recording your steps as the way you would record any application. So in this case, I'm going to hit the record button. I'm going to go into command prompt. I'm going to type in A, press enter, and I can hit done. And then when you go back to your recorder, you can now sort of insert your loop action anywhere that you want. So here I can say apply to each, and I can specify my input array that I had given in over here. And I can then sort of, drag and drop the steps that I want to be repeated over here. So I can customize this experience based on how many steps I want to repeat and stuff. And then, as we saw earlier, you can start composing as well. So you can start adding variables. You can start using variables. You can start using conditions. You can start doing the same things that you were doing in your Power Automate flows over here as well. So it sort of really makes it very rich from an experience perspective on the things you can do.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we saw a bunch of these nuggets. We saw how we could capture output from console. We saw variables, we saw expressions, we saw conditional logic, we saw sort of getting screenshots. We saw copy to clipboard.
Yeah,
We
we
saw
talked some best
loops,
practices and some known ahas.
saw some known ahas around. We also looked at, like, and I think this goes back to our previous conversations as well on some of the best practices in terms of stateless UI flow execution, and making sure that these UI flows are self-contained, so they can run independently on any sort of machine as well. And all these features sort of will help you do a lot more in your automation scripts as you go around building it out.
Awesome. All right. So for you guys at home, we have a couple links down in the description where you can read some blog posts to learn more about these features. Go ahead and leave us some comments about what you'd like us to cover next. Other than that, that's it from us for today. Go ahead and click like, click subscribe, hit the bell so that you don't miss another video. And that's it from us. Pranav, let's say bye. We'll see you guys in the next one.
See you guys.